Yo, still bills, what's the deal, man? I'm fresh off the motherfucking clock. I'm about to go pick up my daughter, go pick up my son, and go home, man. This day was way longer than it needed to be for what it is that we normally do at the site that we went to, man. But peep game, man. Once again, like I said, when you on these boxing forums and these threads and shit, it's always gonna be something to talk about as long as you are active on these threads. I'm suspended. I got a 30-day ban on Facebook, right? So I can't even speak on shit. And it's shit that I really want to speak on these threads, man. But what's my man's name? Trey Boxing Coach, I think that's his name, man. He has a page on Facebook called According to Boxing. Shout out to him. I really dig his analysis, and we always have a positive dialogue back and forth between the two of us, man. But man, this is embarrassing to even repeat, man. At some point, reality has to set in, and you should just know this just really isn't the most logical thing to say. Blue blood sports, like these. This is my biggest beef with the LDBC, and is he even LDBC? I'm not sure, but just people who follow that they're really PBC shields. They'll stop at nothing, and there's no length or there's no depth that they won't go to defend the fighters that represent the PBC side of the street. This man, to big up Earl Spence, because a lot of people are real critical of Earl Spence's victory over Danny Garcia. A lot of people feel it was a cherry pick or a tune-up. I personally didn't feel that. Me personally, I didn't feel like it was a tune-up. Danny Garcia has proven not to be as good as the elites, but he's still a reputable welterweight. He's still a reputable. I won't call him a gatekeeper. I don't know. I don't know. Danny Garcia on your resume is a good name to have on your resume at welterweight. When you start getting into junior middleweight and shit like that, nah, he don't belong up there. So that's a non-issue. But him at welterweight is cool. But I didn't think it was a cherry pick. I didn't think it was a tune-up. I thought him coming off of that horrific car crash, and his body going through the shit that it went through as a result of the car crash, him having to get new teeth, he couldn't be cleared for sparring for months. No broken bones, but neurologically it was like, I'm not too sure of that, man. We don't know where, can you take a flush shot on the chin? Can you get punched all in the head like that? Danny Garcia definitely isn't a dude that you want to get hit by. He might just have, I wouldn't doubt he had junior middleweight power. I wouldn't doubt that at all. Like, if he had a bigger array of skills, I'd trust him at junior middleweight. But because he's so lethargic and sluggish on his feet, and his activity is just so low, it's like, nah. Because I think he's a pretty decent counterpuncher. He's shown a pretty good beard. He could, if he had the skill set to go up to 154, I'd be like, all right, cool, I can see that happening. But because those things right there plague him, it's looking like 147 is going to be his limit. So for Earl Spence to pull, to fight Danny Garcia fresh, a year of inactivity off of a horrific and horrendous car crash, I don't think that's a cherry pick. I don't think that's a tune-up. I think that was a really good gauge to see where he's at. So I salute him for that. But what this nigga Blue Blood said is just so fucking outrageous. How the fuck? He said, what's the difference between Danny Garcia and Roberto Duran? What's the difference between them two? They lost all of their big fights. My nigga, you do realize there was no bigger fight for him than Sugar Ray Leonard, and he beat Sugar Ray Leonard, right? He beat Sugar Ray Leonard. And Sugar Ray Leonard turned out to be the better of the four. I won't say the better. I think Hagler, because I think Hagler won their fight between them. But on paper, he beat Hagler. So he turned out to be the cream of the crop as it pertains to those four. And Roberto Duran beat him. How the fuck do you sit here and say, oh well, Danny Garcia, he lost all of his big fights, so how is him and Roberto Duran any different? As if Roberto Duran never beat Sugar Ray Leonard. As if Roberto Duran didn't beat Iran Barkley. As if Roberto Duran didn't beat Davey Moore at 154 pounds. What are you talking about to capture a title? What are you talking about? Danny Garcia could never, ever in fucking life, 3 lifetimes, be comparable to Roberto Duran. It's not even close. It is not even close. Roberto Duran went up to middleweight and went all 15 rounds with Marvin Hagler. Do you see Danny Garcia jumping up and going all 12 with a Jermell Charlo, a Erickson Lubin, a Tony Harrison, a Jared Hurd? I don't fucking think so. If Danny Garcia jumped up there and fought them cats up there, he's taking the dirt nap. How, even on a skill set standpoint, Danny Garcia can't hold Roberto Duran's jock strap. He can't water that man's mouthpiece. He can't put that man's gloves on before he gets in the ring for sparring. Danny Garcia could never, ever be mentioned in the same breath as a Roberto Duran. Arguably the baddest lightweight to ever lace him up. Beat Sugar Ray Leonard, who turned out to be the better of the four on paper. Even him going 15 rounds with fucking Marvin Hagler is an accomplishment in itself. Because look how Marvin Hagler did Tommy Hearns. Roberto Duran is not a natural middleweight, dog. He's not a natural middleweight. And for him to go up and capture titles up in that, up there is ridiculous. Beating champions at higher divisions that he's not even supposed to be in. You see Danny Garcia getting the belt from Charlo, from Castano? Do you see that happening? Does anybody in their right mind see Danny Garcia jumping up and becoming the champion at 154 pounds? Do you see Danny Garcia even being able to deal with a Patrick Teixeira? Could he have took Patrick Teixeira's title off of him before Castano got to him? And if you say yeah, you were goddamn lying. This is the problem with these cats as it pertains to the PBC. It's just a heightened level of delusion. These are the same niggas who will sit here in your face and tell you, oh yeah, Earl Spence can beat Canelo. He can beat Canelo if they fought at 154 pounds. And it's always something like, no. For one, that wouldn't happen. Why? Because Spence isn't in a position to leverage that type of what's the word I want to look for? He's not in a position to leverage that type of deal in a negotiation because he's not him. You not Canelo, bro. Canelo outsold the fucking Super Bowl, dog. Imagine that. Were the ticket prices cheaper for the Super Bowl or for the fight for the Canelo fight? Absolutely, they were. Absolutely. What do you mean to tell me we ain't got 70,000 plus billionaires on Earth? Come on, man, stop playing. Stop playing. How dare y'all niggas say the shit that y'all say to big up the PBC? This shit is getting spooky. Y'all will do anything to big up Earl Spence. And it's getting weird, because this is weird. This is weird. elevate Danny Garcia as an all-time great like Roberto Duran in order to show Earl Spence in a positive light. You are out of your mind. Flat out of your mind. Danny Garcia does not, they don't even have similar styles for you to even put them in the same sentence together. There's nothing remotely close about them two dudes. Besides them being mestizos. That's about it. Don't put Danny Garcia in the same breath as a fucking Roberto Duran. To big up Earl Spence? Are you kidding me right now? It's just no shame with you dudes. It's no shame. Y'all don't give a fuck about logic to save y'all life. Y'all can care less about that shit. You would compare Danny. I'm like baffled off of this. Listen, I was listening like, are you kidding me? Roberto Duran has beaten fighters in bigger divisions that he did not even belong in, champions, dog. And how do you say he lost all of his big fights when he beat Sugar Ray Leonard? The biggest fight of his career. He beat him. Tommy Hearn did not beat Sugar Ray Leonard. Marvin Hagler on paper did not beat Sugar Ray Leonard. You know who did? Roberto Duran. This is outrageous, man. What do you think would happen to Danny Garcia if he got in the ring with a Roberto Duran? There's nothing Danny Garcia would have been able to do with Roberto Duran. On skills alone. Counter punching, fighting in the pocket, footwork. He knocked Danny Garcia the fuck out. And I get it, it ain't about them fighting or whatever the case may be. But you do have to bring that, you have to present that into the argument. Because you're trying to draw a parallel between the two. You're trying to say, oh well, why isn't Danny Garcia comparable? Danny Garcia is comparable to Roberto Duran. And at that point, it isn't just accolades, because they both fought in the same divisions. So now you can most definitely stylistically match them up. You can match them up. Not even just on, Roberto Duran is a fucking far more accomplished fighter than Danny Garcia. For you to sit there and fix your fucking lips to say some shit like that is baffling to me. That is blasphemous. Roberto Duran, 2 and 3 division world champion. Are you out of your mind right now? Are you out of your mind? He may even be a 4 or 5 division, but you out of your fucking mind talking about what's the difference between Danny Garcia and Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran lost all of his biggest fights. That is not true. He was the only one to beat Sugar Ray Leonard. The biggest fight of his career. And I know I'm baffling, I keep going back to that, but that is so blasphemous and just completely dishonest and just disregarding to history. You're gonna sit here and tell me he lost all his big fights despite giving Ray Leonard his first loss? And you're gonna do that just so you can continue to big up Earl Spence and give him credence for beating Danny Garcia? There is no low you motherfuckers, you PBC seals will not go to big up your man. Because it just completely steps outside of the realm of logic with this bullshit. How the fuck do you do that, bro? You can sit here and definitively tell me Danny Garcia and Roberto Duran is comparable in accolades, skill set, Pause. I'm back, bro. I had to talk to the wifey, man. But nigga, man, these dudes kind of disgust me, man. You know, you want to be, you want to be inviting and supportive of the brothers who put in this work, because this is work, man. You know, you have to. He does a little bit more work than me. Only thing I can really do is give you analysis on shit, man. He actually, goes and looks up articles and shit like that, and really does, journalism. He interviews people. So that's work. You know what I'm saying? That's work. But because of that, you should know better than to say the shit that you say. You should know better than to ever sit there and fix your fucking lips and compare Danny Garcia to Roberto Duran, to big up Earl Spence and really just magnify his win over Danny Garcia. That is outrageous when Danny Garcia hasn't beat any of the cream of the crop. He didn't beat Porter. He did not beat Thurman. And keep shit a stack. He may not be. I don't see him beating Virgil Ortiz or Ennis. Maybe Conor Benn. This is ridiculous with you cats, man, and it's really problematic. It's really, and this is why I just do not fuck with the PBC. I just can't do it, man. I can't get past they cronies. I'm hearing that a lot of y'all are on the payroll, and because y'all are on the payroll, y'all do little gang goofy shit like this, man. And I just can't. I can't fuck with it. I can't stand behind it. I cannot stand behind it. And anybody who would stand by and really try to definitively argue that Danny Garcia is comparable to Roberto Duran needs to be put in a fucking padded room. Roberto Duran is a far more accomplished fighter, and fuck accolades on skills. He would violate Danny Garcia. Violate him. That would not be a competitive fight. He would dance on Danny Garcia in the clinch, forehead to forehead, in the pocket, whatever you want to call it. He would do that man greasy. Oh my God. Danny Garcia is a big puncher. Roberto Duran's a bigger puncher. Roberto Duran's power was able to transition multiple divisions. And his skill set enhanced his power being able to transition multiple divisions. How do you stop Davey Moore? Now, I'm not gonna sit here in front like I'm just, I'm all knowledgeable on Davey Moore, but I'm not. Because I'm not. But what I do though is he took a belt off that bad. At junior middleweight. And everybody is calling for Danny Garcia to stay put at 147 pounds and don't even entertain going up to middleweight, which he's been trying to do since he lost to Earl Spence. Y'all eventually got to come to a realization that what y'all are doing is extremely dishonest. It's extremely dishonest. Don't ever sit there and compare Danny Garcia to Roberto Duran. For you to do that, that would mean he's comparable to fucking Sugar Ray Leonard. And we all know that that ain't the case. Danny Garcia, bro, Roberto Duran. There's no argument for that whatsoever. Please tell me they outside. They're not outside. Damn. That means I gotta go in and grab her. That's all I can't even say any more about that shit, man. Like, anybody arguing that shit, I'm gunning for him. I'm gunning for him. And this is the problem with this is the problem with content creators, man. When they say shit like this, they open these doors for motherfuckers who don't know nothing. And they get wild disrespectful. They get wild disrespectful with the shit. So you would disrespect Roberto Duran, bro. Roberto Duran. I ran Barkley, man. I ran Barkley. Who arguably beat motherfucking Oscar De La Hoya. You gonna argue? I ran Barkley. Duran beat. What do you think Iran Barkley would do to Danny Garcia? As content creators, we got a responsibility to push a positive narrative. We got to walk in a certain truth. So you don't have the people who fuck with you looking stupid. Because I guarantee you, if I go up under that comment section on that video, it's going to be people like, yeah, you know, you got a point, you got a point, you got a point. And motherfuckers who ain't necessarily high up on Roberto Duran, despite his accolades, they're going to have something to say about that. Watch your mouth, my nigga.